welcome to the stage my friend, Art Howell.
I mean, how cool is this? A storytelling conference in the storytelling capital of the world, Los Angeles. I mean, talking about meta. Well, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you today because I do study the applied science and bewitchery of storytelling. And the reason why is it really takes both sides of our brains. But in the business world, we are caught up in the applied science, the left side, the logic brain. You know, in our brains are not logic processors, they're story processors. And I've learned this over a successful career in advertising and marketing, and then one in 2006 that absolutely stopped working. And it stopped working because technology in general took over. I remember the day when we had brands, and the brands owned the influence of mass media. Radio, TV, print, outdoor, direct mail, no Yelp. I mean, our brands could come out and say whatever they want and pretty much almost get you to do anything. But that literally all changed in 2006, at least in my world, when technology completely leveled the playing field. And now, the masses are the media, and they own your story, if they're paying attention whatsoever. Therefore, I changed, and I moved, and I pivoted away from trying to be the brand master to understand truly how does story connect with us, how do we get bewitched as audiences by storytelling, and how can we use it as leaders of purpose-driven brands to actually change behavior and move people forward. I'm going to show you today the three literally most powerful words that I've learned to help you refocus and get totally connected with your own story. Now, we live in a wonderful time because we all now get to be broadcast stations, radio stations. We can write our own music, share our own stories from the private and comfort of our own living room, from our kitchen table, and we can share it 24/7 with the world. Plus, we can find anything we want at any time at a drop of a hat by pulling up Google. But here's the problem. We've outthought ourselves. We literally are Homo sapiens with two brains. This wonderful frontal cortex, which has created all this, is delivering us content that we still sift through our monkey brain. Literally. We make sense out of the madness of being human beings on this world with the same brain that our ancestors used on the savannah to avoid that wild cat out there. It has not changed one bit, and yes, our technical prowess has. What I have found in all this is literally the antidote to this is an anecdote. Story is so primal in who we are and what we're about, that when we, as these technologically minded communicators, start tapping into story, we can overcome this din, this cacophony of communication that we're all up against in the worlds that we communicate in. Now, I saw this yesterday. We were at the final day taping of Mental Samurai, a new show that's coming out on Fox, a game show. And it is crazy. It's this 3-story set. They've got these 4 pillars around it. Each pillar you have to answer a set of questions, from knowledge to puzzles to sequences to memory. And that's not all. What they do is they put you in this little seat, and they put the guests way up in the air, eye to eye with Rob Lowe, who happens to be the host of this thing, and then flies them around the stage as they have to answer 12 questions in 5 minutes. I mean, it is intense. It is amazing. But what I can tell you, my monkey brain was trying to make sense of this, and as we were watching it, we spent the morning there, 4 hours, as they were shooting contestant after contestant, and while we were there, not one of them succeeded. Not one of them answered 12 questions in the 5 minutes. And I thought to myself, again, are we outthinking ourselves? Do we have so much technology that not only are we bombarding, in this case, a contestant with really interesting information and graphics and motion coming at them, but then we're whizzing them around in this techno chair. It was really, really cool to be coming out in early January, and we were there courtesy of our son, who was on the crew, who worked on the motion graphics, so he and I have had a chance to talk about this impact. Let me show you a bit simpler version of what I'm talking about. This is called the Hyder-Simmels study. And I'm going to share a very brief story with you, and then we're going to open it up for conversation. What do you see? Pretty crazy, huh? People are like, what was that? But did your mind have to knit together a story about something going on? You know, when I ask that question, I'll say, who saw maybe something in domestic violence? It's the most common, yeah, there are a lot of you out there. Who saw maybe a bully on the ground, on the playground, messing with another kid? How about a love triangle? Romeo and Juliet. Did anyone? Yeah, yep. A few of you saw Romeo and Juliet. I do this Heider Simmel study, which actually came out in 1944, and every single one of these programs I do because to me it's fascinating, and it underscores our monkey brain at work, and we don't even realize it. So what I showed you was just an abstract artifact of stuff going on, and your brain had to create meaning out of the madness. But the point is, our mind yields helplessly to the suction of story, and it is going to make up a story, and it's probably not the one you intended unless you intentionally tell a story. So let me show you. Let's go back in time a little bit to the caveman. 30,000 years ago, us Homo sapiens became the most aggressive, invasive species precisely because we could think in fiction. We had a better language, and we could live into a shared, imagined reality with our mates. And that's how we overtook the Neanderthal and all other hominids at the time. And that's where we are today. So here we go, 30,000 BC. We have Thog just shows up in the cave, and he's looking a little bit worse for wear. I need a name for his cave buddy there, the heavyset gentleman. Who's got a name for him? Hank. Hank? Hank says, Thog, where you been? Thog says, well, I was just down at river catching saber-toothed salmon. And Hank says, uh-huh. He goes, but saber-toothed tigers show up, want to eat Thog. Hank goes, uh-oh. What'd you do? He says, well, I hit tiger with salmon. Tiger likes salmon better than Thog, so I'm back here at cave. Hank says, aha. Perfect 3-act story structure. So easy, a caveman can do it. Setup, conflict, problem, resolution. Now, it just didn't start in the cave. Let's just start going through time a little bit. Let's jump forward to like 300 BC. Aristotle in Poetics talks about a story. Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And everybody, when I say that, and you might be thinking it right now, is duh. But here's the deal. In business, for whatever reason, probably out of fear, we leave out the middle. We leave out the problem. And yet we leave out the core element of our brand because it's within the solving of that problem that your brand, whether it's your personal brand to grow your influence or your business brand to sell a product or service, that's where the value is. You have to talk about it. Let's keep going. Let's look through life a little bit more. We talked about Shakespeare. You know, here he is hard at work. He's got writer's block, but he talked about introduction, rising action, and climax. Same thing that Thog was talking about back in the day. Sonata Allegro form, Mozart. Did you know it was totally built on 3-act story structure? We have exposition, development, resolution. Hegel, famous theorist, argumentor. He created the dialectic, all about argument. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Stories about change, stories about transformation, taking your audience from one place to the next. You know, we see it everywhere. We see it throughout pop culture. Look at any Spielberg movie, and you are going to see exactly the same sort of setup, problem, resolution happening. And then you see it in really surprising places. There's a current modern-day philosopher who you might not expect, who uses the ABT, this and button, therefore setup, to perfection. South Park, one of the longest running TV shows, let alone animated feature. And they do it in this crass little world that Cartman lives in, but it's so fascinating to hear how they do this and how they make it work. Who would ever think that you could learn a ton about narrative from Cartman? But I got it from another source, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Randy Olson, PhD, evolutionary Harvard-trained biologist, who then went on to USC Film School, graduated from there, produced 3 documentaries on climate change, global warming, but probably more important for all of us is he wrote 3 really amazing books, this one being his last one, on how to teach scientists to become better communicators. And why is that important? Because first and foremost, they have to sell their big ideas to funding institutions, and they have to be crystal clear on what those big ideas, and then secondarily, for us to understand what they're doing and how we can use it in our own lives. And what I love about this guy is he's so trained, but he found Cartman, and that was his aha moment watching that little video of Trey Parker setting up this and button, therefore. When I first learned about it through Andy, I started studying, and I realized the Gettysburg Address is totally an and button, therefore. 7 years ago, by the way, another way of saying once upon a time, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. It's all he needed. One sentence sets the entire stage, sets the entire frame for what he's going to talk about next. But now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. Therefore, we are highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that that government of people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. Perfect and button, therefore, structure. But I guarantee he didn't even know about it back in the day. He didn't have a Cartman to call on. Who spoke before Lincoln? Do you know Lincoln wasn't even the keynote address that day? It was a former Secretary of State, self-proclaimed orator, Edward Everett. Spoke for exactly 13,000 words in 2 hours. Lincoln, 2 minutes, 272 words. That is the power of a focused narrative, especially in this day and age when people don't have focus, when information is bouncing off their heads. But if you want a trick to get around this and button, therefore, will do it for you. I used it on you earlier just to set up. Been in the advertising marketing world for 35 years and have helped a lot of purpose-driven brands grow through the influence of mass media. But technology has leveled the playing field. The masses are the media. Therefore, I now help leaders clarify their stories to amplify their impact and simplify their life. And I do that simply because it makes your monkey brain, your reptilian brain say, he's telling me a story. Oh, and you actually can perceivably see people lean in. So here's how you do this. It's 4 simple things. You simply make a declarative statement of agreement. I've been in advertising for almost 35 years. Nobody can argue with that. It sets the stage. And I simply want to raise the stakes. And I've helped lots of companies do great things with the influence of mass media. But then you want to inflict contradiction. Conflict or contradiction. You could do this in tweets, you can do it everywhere, but it gets your mind thinking in narrative. Because it's like setup, problem, resolution. Remember Hank back in the cave? Setup, I went fishing. His buddy says, but the problem is the lion showed up. And Hank just wants to know what he would do in case he ever finds himself in that same position, living safely, vicariously through fog. Therefore, here's the answer. It literally is so powerful, I've had some people say it's reductive and insulting. And that's when I know I got them, because they don't realize until they start using it just what a hook it is for our narrative brain. Now, what you want to do, and I did this a little bit with you too, is once you set up your context with an and button, therefore, you want to give an example, a quick story example. And you don't have to build the big hero's journey here. Here are 5 primal things that you do. Number 1, give me a timestamp. So when I was telling you about the experience at the game show yesterday, it happened yesterday. Where did it happen? in the studios, Fox's Warner Brothers Studios. I may have neglected to actually say that, but it was a Fox TV show. At the center of this were these contestants that were trying to work and show their knowledge while being completely taxed through technology in every kind, visceral, emotional, mental. And what it underscored to me then, the aha moment that I got, is yet another example of our monkey brain being overwhelmed by the technology of the day. You can use this simple little guide, the and button, therefore, to connect with that Homo sapien mind that's been operating the same way deep inside since 30,000 years ago and overcome this deluge of content. The last thing I want to share with you is how this all simply works in this 3-act structure. So we have the and button, therefore, that sets the context. Share an example story, a timestamp, location stamp, character. It has to have an action, a surprise that comes out of that action that underscores your point. So you're not up there just opining about your opinions and and making aspersions on your audience. You're actually sharing true stories, well told, to underscore your point. And then finally, the 303 of the applied science and bewitchery of story is the story cycle system. That truly is based off of the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. And this is used for greater, longer pieces, for outlining projects, for presentation mode. In fact, you in the audience, you have a book that you can take home and start thinking about this. First, start your story by writing your ABT to set the stage for what you're going to say. Then give us an example story that supports this premise that you set up with your ABT. And then finally, use the story cycle to bring it all together. I've got one other piece to share with you, and that is a free ebook that you can download at businessofstory.com that takes you through the 5 stages of storytelling grief that helps reignite within you that one true superpower that we all possess, and that's the power of story. And I want you to remember, in all of this storytelling land, that the most potent story you will ever tell is a story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thank you. Thank you.